There we go.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so as we go through this, you'll learn that when I talk about regenerative agriculture, I don't mean it in a superficial greenwashing way that most of the media will talk about. I'm talking
No.
the real, what I call the coal face, the farmers really doing it with all of the resources they can bring to bear. So, to that end, we have a choice. It's not just the farmers. In fact, the farmers, as I found yesterday, I'm not the only one that sees apathy. They may all be going up to London and protesting about the IHT, but they don't see there is a need to change. They're quite happy to keep putting on their fertilizers and ploughing. And, as I hear more and more often, the big farmers that are going from ploughing to low or no till methods, they say, oh, we're regenerative farming. Well, they're one step away from destructive agriculture, and they may be on the path to regenerative agriculture, but they're a long way from it.
Mm.
So, um, I I need you to understand that context is everything. We need to understand where we are today to be able to stand any chance of changing it. And I know a lot of people in the healing spheres say you cannot change what you do not know. And
Yeah.
when I do this in a room, I like to know who's there. How many farmers do I have in the room? And in Exeter, there was probably 100 people in the room, and there were two other people that grew actually for sale. Now,
Right.
there are no actual big farmers in the room. And there wasn't anyone selling wholesale direct. There weren't any processors and there weren't any tertiary producers. So that was the state of it. And around here, there is, and I mean around here, around Wallingford, there's one market gardener about 5 mile away, quite a well-known market gardener about 10 mile away, but that's about it. Oh, we've got a small goat dairy, literally a mile down the road from me. And we've got another organic dairy about 5 miles up the road. And ironically, I've tried to buy their milk because they do bottle milk, but they don't bottle it for anyone else. They only bottle it for themselves to sell in their shop. So it gives you an idea that there is very, very little actually available for us to buy locally. So people say you're a crazy woman, and I am a crazy woman, but I'm here because after 25 years of looking at the problem, I know we're in very, very deep trouble. The damage we have done to our environment since we came down from the trees and or tamed fire has continued apace, decade after decade, generation after generation. One of the little things I looked into some years ago was island history and places like Easter Island, Malta, the Orkneys. They all show the same pattern. They were all very, very busy, thriving communities, hundreds, thousands of years ago, and then it all collapsed. And I believe it is for one primary reason. When we went to the islands, it would have been forested and it would have collapsed with no trees left to cut down.
Mm.
There is a saying that there was a time when a squirrel could go from Land's End to John O'Groats without touching the ground. Now, I don't know what percentage of this country is forested, but not anywhere near it like it used to be. And it is down to our collective decision making. Unlike the Native Americans, the Western grab for power has
Yeah.
meant they looked at one metric, how much money they could earn.
Yeah.
They didn't look at the extortion of the people, the land, the planet, tomorrow. They just looked at how much do we earn now. And, the way we can look at that today, 50 years ago, there would have been, from where I currently sit in a village, there would have been 7 or 8 farmers around the village producing primary foods for us. No primary food is left with effectively just 2 farmers in the village, having taken it all over. Um, just so that you understand, from a consumer's perspective, going into a supermarket, for every pound that goes over the till, there is a secondary cost paid down the line by you, the environment, the animals, or something else. You just don't pay for it financially. And the other thing is, for every, and I think I've got it on another slide, for every half ton of food that's actually eaten in the country, we lose a ton of topsoil. And if you look at that slide, you look at the Severn Estuary and it's brown. That is topsoil washed down there through our agricultural practices. So that I showed you that as just one example of the malaise that effectively everywhere in the Western world is. Biodiversity is crashing at a rate of 10% a year. My question, and I don't think any academic is brave enough to ask it, is how long before this becomes a point of no return? How much biodiversity can we lose before it absolutely becomes totally existential for us? And as I said before, life is exploited in multiple ways just for the shareholders. Our farming community has been lost in all of its diversity. And how often do we think local community and economy has also been lost? The Green Economics Institute about 15 years ago printed a study, and they reckon for every £10 spent at the supermarket, £2 went to the local economy. But for £10 spent in your local shop, 7 goes back to the local economy. So I'm going to show you a picture of where it actually started in, if Hollywood got hold of this, this would be a major plot twist. But this all started in 2001. This was a photograph I took of my son 3 weeks into a highly efficient healing methodology. The NHS was one of my learning points, or their lack of health, shall we say. I would say they totally caused this. I had a child scratching his skin off day and night. Tony had been in hospital with viral meningitis as a result of sleep deprivation. You can imagine what the child was like. And I had no family left. I had no one left to turn. I didn't know what to do, but I had done a little bit in natural health. And at the time, we had our own small holding, and the only thing I could do was sell it and find answers. This photograph was about 7 months after I got the money for the small holding, and I was able to actually invest in my learning. And 3 weeks after this picture, he was skin clear for the first time since 6 weeks of age. But you can imagine that we went from that in the learning of health. And every time I learned something, I'd have 5 questions come up, and I'd go and find the answer to those questions. They would throw another 5 up. And it would just give you some idea. I couldn't put a figure on how much training I did at the time. Touch for Health was what I did way before this ever happened. And in 2002, I qualified in various areas of bioresonance, energy medicine, emotional freedom techniques, metamedicine, scalar. I've used matrix reimprinting incredibly, and at last I understood Bruce Lipton's work. He's incredible. The whole thing of epigenetics was a light bulb moment. And without a shadow of doubt, pharmaceutical, sorry, owns the big agrochemical companies, and they are the ones behind all of the harm, both to us, the animals, and the environment. Um, and for 25 years, I've known the food system had to change. But I am, and I have been, or we have been, tenant farmers. Um, oh, just you can have a bit of a laugh. In 2008, the very day the banks went bust, we had a chance to take on a farm shop in another farm, which we did incredibly. No money, no resources, nothing. We were in there for 15 months doing the impossible. And in our only competition to date, we got a gold award. In fact, we just missed out on the second gold award due to just being novices. But hey ho.
Well done. Brilliant.
Yeah, we were trying to do the impossible. The farm, the shop, and the house were all 12 miles in between them. The children were still in primary school. We had no money or any reserves for that matter. I had no family. Yeah, believe me, when you farm, you have no friends. Um, our customers absolutely adored what we did. We had our own beef, our own pork, our eggs, some of our own vegetable. I was very selective on what I bought in, although we were actually organic at the time. I wasn't necessarily buying organic, but actually Reading at the time had more local producers than I have now here. Um, but with my children at primary school, it was all just too much. I mean, we had our main um, butchery counter fridge go down in the summer. We got that back up and running, and our outside walk-in chiller was raided. We lost about £5,000 in the chiller, and there was another scenario which one day I will share with people. We just went, can't do this, it's too much. So after 15 months, we gave up. However, in 2014, and I will say, there's a lot to be said for just, you know, chugging up and down on the tractor or shoveling. Um, I was working with two change facilitators at the time, and there was an international grasslands conference in London, which was to me a Pandora's box because they streamed everything. I couldn't afford the 300 quid ticket to go to London, but what they streamed was incredible. I'd since learned, as many people now know, is not to read the media. And it's the same in the farming press. So I didn't read anything. We were learning the hard way. Um, the important bit there is the bit about the flood. In the winter of 2014, we had a pretty big flood on uh, on our water meadows. And the little bit of data I would like you to understand is the 16 cow days per acre, which basically means 1 acre of land and its grass could only sustain a cow for 60 days in a year. And these were the people that we did this with. And I eventually went to train with the founder of Holistic Management in Zimbabwe. We did the leadership training out there, and I have to say, at a personal level, his insights have been absolutely phenomenal. And to me, the lessons on the grassland on a practical side have been absolutely revolutionary. But it's his thought leadership that I personally think is the most enlightening out there. So from the winter spring of 14-15, we had most of the farm flooded. 3 years later, that is absolutely phenomenal. We actually were away at the time when that photograph was taken. A contractor had been down to do some seeding for us, or I don't know if it was seeding, and he had seen this crop. And bear in mind, it's his business going and doing agricultural stuff for people. He said he had never seen grassland so vibrant, so thick. so productive. And he said, how did we achieve it? And he wouldn't believe it. All we did was management of the cattle, and actually we put some wood chip in it. This is one of our fields from a few years ago from the satellite image. And when you look closely, it looks a little bit like I've had a lawnmower go over it from the air. But this is our management. And if you ever get bored enough and want to look at people's cattle management, if ever you see this striping on someone's field, um, it's the way we actually manage. If you look really, really carefully, just to the right of the green bit on the left side of the picture, you'll see some little tiny black dots, and they are actually the cows grazing.
I can't see that, can you?
Okay. Remember I said context is everything? It took us 10 years when we started farming in 1996 to get the tenancy you've just seen. We had no house, no buildings, no power, not even a decent ring fence. The total of our farm is 95 acres, most of it being flood meadow. We've also got some parkland. We had the shop, as I said, from 2008 and 9. But most significantly, if you remember the Beast of the East, I actually had 2 head injuries in 10 days. And that was a big thing for me. I was an emotional basket case for a year or two. And I've got to say, even today, I have to manage my stress very, very carefully. So I had to step back a lot from the farm at that point and the management. And it's why I went down the community and the retail route.
Mhm.
Um, this was just a little bit about why I'm doing it now. Both Tony, my partner, and I came up working with people that had been growing food all their life, and we knew the difference between good food and the stuff they now produce. When we bought holistic management to the country, we started to make our own compost. I learnt no dig in 2021. I was invited to take over a tiny food co-op locally because I was growing, and then I expanded that to a veggie box scheme, which actually at the end of lockdown I was going to give up because the amount of people that had gone back to the supermarkets because lockdown had ended, it was no longer viable. But a handful of my customers said, "We love what you do. Is there any way we can, save this? We want to keep you to keep supplying us." And I explained, well, the only way I knew of was to have a food co-op so that everything that was bought was shared out and sold. Um, and in 3 months, we started with 16 people buying an average of £42 every 2 weeks. And that went to 36 people spending an average of £74 every 2 weeks within 3 months. And that was just organically growing. You know, if we had been able to continue, I think it would have worked, but I was doing an awful lot of hours doing that. And sadly, it didn't work out for me. Um, I then, we did move through Food for Change, which was a bigger version of that first co-op. Again, it was done in the private. It wasn't done as in commerce. And because I really did want to see it work, I stayed with it for longer than I should have done. And it was last summer I realized it just was not going to work. I didn't have the money, I didn't have the resources to support people to buy organic food cheaply. Um, there are a few things happened last year that were just synchronous. I was able to buy our old URL back, which was Vitality Farm. And I got back in contact with a company that I was actually talking to back in the time of the shop, a company called Food Commerce, which is how we then ended up with our online shop again. I say again, it really has been a 15-year um, evolution, shall we say. I'm part of a big WhatsApp farmer group at the moment that's all about, they're all about protesting. Um, and one day I shared something, I shared the first snippet of this. I said on the group, we need to do something differently. We import 60% of the food to this country. And the admin came back and said, oh, that's not right. That's not right. And I went, okay, well, okay, I didn't verify the 60% this time, but 3 years ago I did do a study. And 3 years ago, from the government's own data, we were importing 50%. And I said, you know how many farmers have stopped producing because they can't get labour? He didn't reply. Um, the reason I say that is farmers are blinkered. They are comfortable. They can get by. They don't have to change anything to get by. We are the ones, you and I, I'm going to put myself in consumer shoes for a minute. I would be terrified if I didn't know how to grow food. I would be absolutely bricking it now. You know, we don't feed 1% of the population. I don't believe anywhere in Oxfordshire do we produce more than 1% of the food. And whenever I've been talking about local food, people have gone, oh, yeah, I want to buy local food. But I have one thing to say. How can you sell local food when none is produced? The answer is we've got to change the environment so we can grow new people to grow the food. That's the only way this is going to change. You're not going to get the big farmers to change because they don't see there's a problem. And the other side of the equation is I have an acre market garden that stands idle within our tenancy, but we can't put enough hours in the day to produce on it, and we can't pay someone enough money to produce for us because of the price of real estate around here. If I wanted to hire a couple of permaculturists to grow for us, it would be far more to pay them than we'd ever get back in produce. So this is why I say, how do we find people to grow when we're surrounded by some of the most expensive real estate in the world? This is why I call it reality check. It's why I'm talking to you, not farmers, because more of you get it than the farmers will. We actually have to be the light. We have to find a way to start a new system. Now, this, I believe, is a landscape picture very, very close to here. It's very beautiful and it's very typical of the landscape around here. But the question at the top, where's the food? And I say this to everyone. When you're driving around, look at where the food is actually being grown. I'm not talking about the cows and the sheep in the fields. I'm talking about where's the real food being grown. So I'm going to just flick back. So this is my shop. The next phase that I'm not actually going to talk about was this. Bullet point 1 is what I'm actually doing. I'm learning the bugs. I'm trying to find the customers that understand what I'm trying to do and why. Don't like the word customers, but it's better than consumers. Quite simply, we as farmers are so far down the pecking order. If I can find a system that works for me, and the way it's currently going, I've already got interest from other farmers. Because ultimately, we will have our own beef going through this again. If we can make chicken coldits, we will have eggs again. And if we can find any time, we will try and get some of our own veg. but we're a long way off. All I can do is offer product that we don't actually produce in the meantime to help support our income to eventually free us up enough to grow more. If I can do this, we're going to set up a demonstration web shop with lines like you've seen on ours. Um, People are going to be able to choose whether they just stay organic or whether they offer both or just non-organic. Um, we're doing this because the producer well, the supplier, it's not a producer, I'm buying from has a huge catalogue of produce and literally I can get it the next day. So with my current system, orders finish midnight Sunday night. I put the orders in with all the various suppliers Monday morning. It's here Tuesday, and the very fresh stuff, the bakery, and the milk is here Wednesday morning, just in time to go off in the boxes. But that's what we call just in time. And the best part is, with most of that, you don't have to have money to put into it. Um, so that's the concept of the next phase. I just thought I'd go back and sort of prove that I did really do it. I did 26 30-foot long beds, 2.5 foot wide. And I did also have a polytunnel as well. Um, I don't consider myself a gardener. But what we grew was superb. And I really, really, really do want to get back to it, especially as we make our own high quality compost. I was saying earlier, we really have to rethink, and it's not just me, it's going to take all of us. It's going to take people taking a risk, not expecting me to be Tesco with the absolute perfect um, way of making things easy. It's going to take people to say, actually, I'm going to hold on to this and have a go at this. I'm going to help support it. Our first Zoom last night was about what is working or what isn't working. And to be entirely honest with you, I hoped there had been more people saying why it wasn't working, because I think in why it's not working, you actually learn more. I just had happy customers on there. Um, the other thing you've got to remember, people that are genuinely producing regenerative are the small farmers, the local farmers, the ones that are struggling. And that's where it really will come in and it really will be local. That's just a quick, that was one of my deliveries one day in the early days. If I were to digress and go back and I said to you, no house, no buildings, no power. In the winter when it floods, the following picture is something that we've had no choice but to have. We really don't like damaging our pastures like that. Um, Surprisingly, we have pretty good rebound because of the way we then go on and manage it. But these lovely farmers who are out there with their second, third, fourth generation farms with houses and barns and power, uh, you know, they can't comprehend. You know, we do love our cattle. About 8 years ago, we did eventually achieve, we built our own barn. We actually sculpted it into the landscape, and that was an absolute watershed. So we could minimize damage to the pasture. And there you go. There they are, happy cows in the shed. But believe it or not, that is our pasture. The pile in the middle is actually a compost heap that was going to go out on the grass. But the Thames had other ideas. I thought you might like that one. That's my man in his office on a wet day. He's a happy soul. Anyway, so actually, as I speak today, I think it's going under again. It's been under twice since September. Um, Actually, last winter was a flood very similar to 2014-15, and we knew historically if we had a flood like the 2014-15 one, it would knock our grass productivity for six. Last year in the spring, the flood was very late receding, and I had meant to put a picture that I found in here of it. You know, I actually had ducks on a pond in the middle of it, but because we had an issue with cows that had come and ended up with TB and all sorts of things, we had to put the cows down on the water meadow ahead of the flood having fully receded. And there were farmers all over the country saying grass wasn't growing, grass wasn't growing. Well, I can tell you now, our grass was growing in a way we've never seen it grow after the flood. And I was talking to Professor Tim Lang a few weeks ago, and I was explaining the metrics to him, and he actually said that's absolutely incredible to have not lost any productivity. In fact, we can see it growing better than a non-flood year is absolutely significant. So this coming year, we're going to redo our soil samples. We had it done in 2015. We had more done in 2020. Um, we did, we bought ecological outcome verification. In fact, it was the first verification in the UK back in 2017. And we did the monitoring for EOV in 2020, which was the second time I had soil samples done. The tenancy I had at the time up at Hinksey in Oxford had the most biodiverse pasture at the time monitored in England. Um, from the data, according to the science that I've read, we could very easily have sequestered over 1,000 tons of carbon in the last 10 years, which is significant. It's pretty significant when you take the climate narrative. We have seen huge amount of changes. We know we've got biodiversity coming back. And perhaps one of the most telling conversations, and I didn't have it, but Tony had it with a lady that was walking the path back in, I think, about October time. She used to be local. She knew the land very well. And I don't know how they got talking, but she said, "Oh, she said the changes I've seen have been absolutely phenomenal." Um, but the thing she said that took us all back was she said, these meadows used to smell really rank. And she said, it smells really lovely down here now. You know, none of the books tell you about smelling the place.
Mm.
Um, but I've got to create another miracle this year because the only way we're going to go forward is to buy some freehold. Um, we've been a tenant for too long. It's far too tenuous, not knowing from one year to the next where we're going to go, never having enough barn space, always needing power and wishing we had concrete. Um, that's highly complex issue. But if we could monetize the carbon we intend to prove we have sequestered, um, we intend to try and buy, say, freehold to supplement what we're doing. Um, that is my daughter, she's actually got the tenancy up at Oxford now. Um, at the time that photo was taken, she'd just become the youngest Borgo judge in the world. And today, we still have no house, no power, and no concrete. But I'm still here now.
A beautiful little kid.
So that is the why. I hope there's enough information in there for you to understand where I'm coming from. I've been looking at this problem for 25 years. The complexity of it, I could never do in the time here and now. Um, so did what do you think I've missed out? That would be a good thing. What didn't I say that you would have liked to have known about?
I think that what you've covered is absolutely gobsmacking and extraordinary that you've been so courageous to go through all of that and still want to carry on. So I salute you. So fantastic.
Well, I did say something about insanity, didn't I?
Um, so what sort of support are you looking for from here on in?
What I have to do, and the reason I've done this as like a baseline for me, is to be able to communicate just one of the fundamentals of where I'm coming from and the why and I do mean we, whilst I've learnt the complexity of what needs to be done, I can't be it all anymore. Um, this sounds daft, but I would rather go and have a root canal than I would try and sell something, but I
Wow.
will happily share information. Um, what I need more than anything else is people that say, yes, I'll have a go at, at sticking with you and I will buy from you. I will buy, I will use this until we've got the bugs out and we can really go for it to the next level. Also, me getting it right means I can work on the template for the other farmers.
Okay.
My heart tells me to share this, and my head is telling me to shut up. The
Hello,
concept,
Marion. Sorry.
yes.
Do you want to, yeah, no, I'm from Scotland, and I've been following you for a wee while, and I've been watching the news. I mean, I try and avoid watching the news, and I've been um paying attention to this concept of stakeholders with the WEF and all this nonsense that's been happening for the past 5 years. What I'm concerned about is how do I, as an individual, support people like you, the farmers who are wanting to create a balance within the environment and producing food. Something in Scotland. I mean, I know I'm far up north, but I don't know how I would do that. So
Okay.
I'm very pleased to hear what you've been talking about, and you've given so much information here, some new concepts to me, and I've been trying to do my own research, but it's really hard to find out what stuff means.
Okay. What do you mean by what stuff means? Just give me an idea, clarify.
Regenerative farming.
Okay.
And
So regenerative is a really good one. Now, to me, regenerative means taking responsibility 100% for the land you've got, or if you've not got, understanding it, which is why your question is so good. Regenerative agriculture means taking what you've got and doing your damnedest, returning it to the way nature would have had it had we not got involved.
mhm.
And just about everything we've ever done is destroying everything from the soil through to the biodiversity, through to the farmers, through to our own community, for God's sake. Now, if you're the other end of the scale, if you're a fifth generation, 10,000 acre owning John Deere fleeted farmer, this isn't meaning to be farmerish, but they think regenerative agriculture is just doing less harm. That's how it comes over. And I've spent many, many days speaking to farmers in this regard. And some are doing really well. I mean, if any of you have seen the 6 inches of soil, there is what I call a big farmer, an arable farmer, that is I think they've done it the right way. They've taken the time to say, well, I don't know how this works, but I'm going to start. And they started by not using their plough and using less artificial fertilizer and sprays. And they've had to learn a lot of lessons. In fact, they've learnt lessons that I couldn't. And I do recommend 6 inches of soil if you haven't seen it, very, very much. But there are a lot of farmers that think, well, if I stop using my plough, that'll be regenerative. Well, it's less destructive. I struggle to see it even on the stick of regenerative agriculture. But in all fairness, it's probably right on the very end of it, going no-till. When we, how do I say this? I wouldn't eat modern wheat. I don't drink much beer, so I don't need too much barley. Barley isn't actually needed for the livestock anyway. Ruminants don't need corn. I would like to see the fields going back to old-fashioned grains, and we've got one of the best guys in the world close to us. He's been growing up grains that they found in a thatched roof sort of 25, 30 years ago. And I have it on good authority that his grain, when milled and cooked as a sourdough, people that can't eat wheat have no problem with. I wouldn't go as far as to say celiacs, because we know celiac is another ball game. But people that have wheat problems have no problem whatsoever digesting old-fashioned grains. His grain, so to give you an idea, a good yield of modern grain is between 4 and 4.5 tons to the acre in this area. He reckons, but that 4 to 4.5 tons means a fair degree of cultivation, a fair degree of fertilizer, pesticides, herbicides to grow it. The ancient grain, John says, year one, he will what we call power harrow it, which is a shallow form of tillage. And he seeds into it and he leaves it all season. And he said, you get a crop that stands over our head height with a huge diversity of grains within it. When it comes to harvest, they had to have their combine specially adapted to be able to cut that high, and then they chop the straw down and leave it. They just leave it all winter. And in the spring, they just go through with the drill and they plant it again. No fertilizer, no herbicide, no spray, no running up and down. Just seed it, harvest it. You know, the big farmer will say, yes, but he's only getting 800 or 900 kilos to the acre. Yeah, but what about the lack of input? Look at the premium he will be getting for it. Because I don't know about you, I don't want to eat modern wheat. You know, I know when I've had modern wheat now. You know, I just want to sleep.
That's true.
So I offer that as an example of true regenerative agriculture. You know, when we get to the stage where we don't even have to seed it, we will have evolved into a totally different sort of grain. And whilst I believe there is some perennial grains in the pipeline, I haven't followed that for about 5 years. Does that help, Mona?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, that's fantastic.
I mean,
But
the other thing you've got to say is there is an awful lot you can do in regenerative agriculture. You know, the reason I say we have to have freehold is we need more barn space. If we hadn't have been a tenant, we'd had the sort of barn space and the facilities any other farmer in the area would have had. That expected 1,000 ton of carbon would have been at least 1,500 ton of carbon. but it's because we've had to sacrifice meadows because we haven't had the facilities that, we won't have sequesters as much. But the point is, if the farmer is doing everything within their power, or that, when I say power, within their resources, and they're trying their hardest, they're regenerative. If they're dipping their toe into it, I can't find the word for that. But I hope you understand there is a difference. It's a mindset shift.
Mhm.
And don't let anyone greenwash you with regenerative. When you get people like Dyson, Dyson's got a lovely YouTube video about their strawberry production. This is a man that calls it regenerative because of the way he's doing it. And yes, it's probably better. But ultimately, until we get things like soft fruit production back in our localities, it's never going to be regenerative.
Is there
It's
a network of these farmers together across the UK?
that is nirvana. That is the nirvana, but we are so, so very far away from it. So very far away. Um, once upon a time, when there was, dozens of small farms, you had a network, but they've died out. And just a really good example. So I, when I first started doing this, I say first, probably second year I started doing this, I am my nearest market gardener that has any surplus is an hour away, but he doesn't actually have a lot. So I ended up going to Lincolnshire from here, which is a complete day's trip. And I went to this one farm that had about 7 or 8 different vegetable produce in crates, and they do sell to big wholesalers as well. But that was one, and it took me all day to effectively get 2 pallets of vegetable. And I could say the same if I went west, or, it would be a day's trip. The network is just like a couple of ropes. That's what the
Right.
network is at the moment.
Mhm.
And I would love to say, we will build the network, but we will build the network by doing it. And it's not, there is someone else in the mix here. There's a lovely gentleman that saw one of my very early podcasts. I think was with Richard Vobes. And he actually contacted me and said, I've been in IT and logistics, working as self-employed contractor for the supermarkets for most of my life. And in 2020, he went and offered the government to decentralize and democratize the food system because he had the technology to do it. And they were not interested at all. And I've kept in contact because he knows things I couldn't imagine. And it is in the network, it is in the making it work as a network side of things. And I caught up with him earlier in the week, and he said he was just absolutely floored by the fact that the farmers are demonstrating to the degree they are, but none of them actually want the system to change.
That's a shame.
And, it will change. My concern is the whole 2030 agenda. I mean, if we could build any form of network in the next 5 years, you know, when when we brought Savory to the UK, we had to do a business plan, and we worked the business plan on a preceding thing of mine that was, just a concept. But I said if we had 300 farmers having a shop, a bit like you've seen of mine, they would probably need 10 producers around them to produce for them. So if we had those 300 times 10, we'd have 3,000 farmers producing for a new network. I think that would be an awful lot. I would like to think that's possible. As I say, I would like to think it's possible, but it's going to be the small farmer because the
Mhm.
metric of change means it's those that are uncomfortable looking for answers that will do this. The people that can still get by, still go home at night, turn the light on, eat, sleep, repeat, they are not the ones that will change. They will change when they see the little guys that were struggling changing. It's the old thing about being the lighthouse. We have to be the light. The one reason I've stuck with this is I said about, I can't remember who it was. I had someone down the farm that wanted to do a survey of, I think it was power survey or something. And it was a case of, well, if I can make this work, anyone in the country can make it work. Because I don't believe there's anyone less disempowered in farming than we have been. So in that respect, it will be the light. I do believe we can do it. But I am at that point now where, as I said to you, I'd rather go and have a root canal than sell anything. So it's down to people saying, yeah, okay, I'm going to come on, I'm going to have a go. But it's also more than that. It's more of a can-do attitude. You're not just buying a product anymore. You're being part of a sentient system. That's what I've always called this. 3 years ago when we were starting to say, how do we do this? I said this needs to be a sentient company. And everyone said, what's that? And at the time, I said, well, it's 5D, it's going to be new this, new that, not going to incorporate, not. But at the end of the day, we know we're at war. We have to use, as far as I'm concerned, I'm incorporating in a way and a method that means I can use all the benefits of the system without paying anything into the system that has enslaved us.
Yes.
Does anyone not understand what I mean by that? So that's
Yeah.
the concept of it. Every resource we can bring to bear as a collective, as a community, is what will fire this from beneath. It isn't just a case of buying product. That's not the point. Buying product is like putting fuel in a tank of a car, but you still need to drive it. Do you understand that analogy?
Mhm.
You
So, I
know,
think so.
yeah, that's
Yes.
that's the thing. So all I see is the thinking and the doing and the holding on to the bits and pieces is building the car. So by buying food from it or buying product from it, you're putting fuel in the tank. And then by thinking about it at the next level, okay, was that the product I wanted? Did that work? Didn't it work? How can it be better? Is there someone else? Is there someone else that might like to do this? What can I do? That's you driving it. Go on, Carol.
So, if we if we're going to switch to supporting you by
Yeah,
buying all our food,
yeah.
we live um, in Hampton near Twickenham.
Okay.
Uh, so basically, you could supply us with the milk,
Yep,
everything,
yep,
everything we want, you can
yep.
supply. How do you get it to us? You did say
I
earlier.
I need 25 orders in and around London to put the van on. We were working with Parcel Force, but that failed abysmally on their part. I used DHL for the first time this week, and yes, I I believe it's all got there, and no one's jumped up and down and said it's broken. The Good Food Project up in Scotland actually gave me the heads up on that when they did a Zoom with Richard Vobes, a podcast with him, and said they were using courier. And more farmers I know are using couriers. I don't want to use courier long term, especially not multinationals. but we have to start somewhere. We have to start with what we've got. What I was also going to say to you, the whole point, and this comes back to Mona's question, I think, the national delivery service needs to be thought of as a step towards. Um, I never really followed Riverford in the early days, much to do with the fact we were growing our own and I couldn't have afforded it anyway. But they were using a franchise system, and that would be the next step after courier. So, you know what I said about setting the environment to grow new producers? If I could have, if I was selling nationally, we I'm going to just say Manchester, just say north of Manchester. It's a big area where there's no one growing much, and I've got customers up there. Let's say I've got 20 customers north of Manchester. Someone approaches me and says, we can rent 5 acres off a farmer to grow vegetables. I will go, yippee, here's the 20 customers you can service now. You can have the business, the profit, everything. Because they will need all of that customer base to get them from off the ground to their first harvest. And then they can keep those customers and anything else that comes up in their area through us. Because that's how I see this becoming a sentient company. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. So um, at the moment, it's just me and Sharon that would be interested in buying off you. We would have to network to find out who else would be interested in coming on board.
Yeah.
Um, so are you saying that you
I
would
can,
not do
yeah, no, I
EPD,
can, no,
two
I
of us?
can, absolutely. I say it worked this week, so long as you don't mind it coming by courier for a few weeks until we can get the numbers up. That's
Okay.
absolutely fine. Um,
And is it your milk that we'd be?
no,
Um,
no, 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 no.
no,
So I'm doing another Zoom on Monday about milk, specifically about milk.
not a
Um,
purveyor or anything.
yeah, because it's such a hot topic. I've got a holistic vet coming on, the guy that has Dora's Dairy, which is raw milk, coming on. I've got a friend who's now a beef farmer in Northampton. He used to be a commercial dairy producer, and I've asked him to speak about why he no longer produces it. There's a lady that also runs a raw milk co-op in my area. Now,
Oh,
everyone wants me to supply raw milk.
yeah.
Um, because it's such a hot topic, it would have to be done through the website, and I have a way it can be done. You have to also basically sign a waiver saying that you understand what raw milk is, you accept all liability, and
Yeah.
then there will be a product on there that won't be described as milk, and you would just order it as 1 litre or 2 litre, and then it will be shipped with the rest of it. Um, I can't ever see us having the facility to produce milk in any way, shape, or form on our current farm. I'm not saying, if we were offered 100 acres down the road with barns and house, I wouldn't. I absolutely would. But, I'm trying to stay within the realms of reality.
Yeah,
So
sure.
yes, that's the bottom line with milk and raw milk. The other milk at the moment is Barclay Farms from Swindon. We actually do go there and collect. They have some phenomenal yogurt. Everyone says their yogurt is the best out there. Um, the raw milk that I'm talking about getting, you have to bear in mind, I'm not going to do it unless I have a minimum of 120 litres sale per cycle because it's a 3 hour round trip for me to collect it. Um, but they also do pasteurized Jersey, non-organic. So it's not organic, this raw, but they are 100% pastured. They don't, although they're not certified organic, they don't add anything to the cows or pasture. And I can tell you it's pretty good stuff.
I'd like to ask about the grains local to you that you were talking about with,
Mhm.
I have wheat intolerance, so I was just curious as to.
Getting hold of John Letz's flour is really, really difficult. He's he's slipperier than a greased pig to get hold of, just because he's so busy. Um, what was the name of it? Something fair. Oh, knickers. He used to get it milled at Shipton Mill. However, 18 months ago, there was a gin factory in Oxford offered him a lot of money to sell it to them exclusively, which, if you knew John's story, and that is a day for when I'm not live on something that could be broadcast, I would tell you about. I would, if I was in his place, I would have taken the offer. Um, and then it went base over apex. It went sideways for him. So I don't know if he's got any grain this year. I have said to him numerous times, ultimately, the website I want to have no modern grain, no commodity milk, no modern flour, no refined seed oils in. Oh, and no refined sugar. Sugar's going to be the hardest one. Um, so yes, I would love to say, yes, I've got John's flour. I haven't yet, but more to the point, I want to see if the bakery in Oxford that's using his flour has still got it, because then I will get a tie up with them as well. Again, it's not organic, but it's incredibly good. Um, but when you've only got a dozen people a week ordering, I could spend all week running around just for the fun of it. So this is the chicken and egg. I need to go to the next level, having people ordering so that it's worth me doing all the running around, you know. From me to go to Swindon, well, actually, my daughter did it the last 2 weeks. She went from Oxford to southwest Swindon to Cheveley, back here, and then it's about a 40-minute round trip to the bakers. Um, and that's a local baker's, not the one I was talking about that uses John's flour. So you can see how it will be very in-depth getting it right. At the moment, all the meat we've got is organic, except the game. I mean, you can't certify game anyway. Or actually, I wouldn't want game that was certified.
No.
Um, we need to get to a point where the meat is not frozen. I will be adding non-organic, not because I believe in non-organic, because I don't, but we are not certified on the farm and haven't been for 10 years now because certification nearly killed us. And if certification for organic nearly kills you, then it's an oxymoron, which is why we came out of it. We are, as I say, you won't find anyone more regenerative. We do everything with our power to get it right. Um, but there are a lot of people out there that cannot afford organic, full stop. Oh no, God, it died on me. Oh, okay.